Hello BookTube. Today on my 2023 library tour, I will be continuing this first bookcase of science fiction and fantasy. The first two books probably should be in a box. But anyway, so first up is Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. This is his National Book Award winning novel about a Chinese American actor who's trying to win a plum role in life. I picked it up shortly after it won the National Book Award and read it or bailed on it in May of 2021, and I haven't gone back to it. I've kind of thought about it, and I'm not entirely sure where to put it. I mean, is it literary fiction? Is it science fiction fantasy? Since that's what Charles Yu mostly writes, so I'm undecided. But I do know I am not particularly fond of Charles Yu's short story collection, Third Class Superhero. This is a short story collection that is, I think there's maybe one story that I kind of like, but that's it. Next up are two books by Gene Wolfe. This is In Green Jungles, the second book of the Book of the Short Sun. Picked this up a few years ago from my local library when they de-accessed it. They have a sell nook where they sell a lot of beat up books or de-access books. I also have I think it's the first book in the series. Yeah, On Blue Waters. This is the first book. I also have another trilogy by John Sprunk, the Black Earth series. This is the third book, Blade and Bone. I also have the first book, Blood and Iron. And the second book, Storm and Steel. I haven't gotten around to any of these yet, which is probably why they're not quite yet in the box with the other trilogy by John Sprunk that I have. This is the first book in what is, at least for now, the Crescent City duology. This is City of Lost Fortunes by Brian Camp. This is a wonderful urban fantasy novel set in post-Katrina New Orleans that I have read several times and I just absolutely love. I love this book. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the sequel, Gather the Fortunes. This book switches the protagonist, and I just didn't get on with this book as well as I did the other one. I've read it twice and my opinion hasn't improved. I also have Swords and Dark Magic, the new Sword and Sorcery anthology edited by Jonathan Strahan and Lou Anders. This is an anthology of more recent sword and sorcery writing from the 2000s. The thing about sword and sorcery, and this is a really good anthology, I really like a lot of the books and stories in here, but the thing about sword and sorcery is that it's sort of a cyclical genre. About every 15 to 20 years, there's renewed interest. New sword and sorcery stories are being written, and then after a few years, it dies down. Although there's a very dedicated sword and sorcery fan base. Next are two books by Martha Wells that I haven't gotten to yet. This is City of Bones. And I also have The Element of Fire. These are both fantasy novels, I think. Next is what is right now a duology, although I think there should be a third book coming at some point in the next 1,000 years. But right now it's called the Band Sequence. I think it's the Band Sequence. But anyway, so this is the first book in the series, Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is a fantastic, epic fantasy that takes as its conceit that mercenary bands who are sort of ubiquitous in fantasy and certain kinds of fantasy are the rock stars of this kitchen sink fantasy world. And so Nicholas Eames uses a lot of musical references and Easter eggs, and it is just rather delightful. I really enjoyed this book when I read it, although I haven't actually reread it, which is rather a shame. And I'm not, unfortunately, as fond of the sequel, Bloody Rose. This is about the daughter of one of the heroes from the first book and her band of mercenaries. And I thought the first 150 pages were a letdown. But the rest of the book is fairly good. It's just that 150 pages is just fatal. Next are 3 books by David Eddings. This is the Ruby Knight, which is the second book in the Elenium trilogy. I read this when I was in high school and remember it rather fondly, which is why I picked up this and the... Oh, I have the 3 books in the 2/3 of the Elenium. I just don't have the first book. So this is the Sapphire Rose, the concluding volume in the Elenium trilogy. But I picked them and the sequel trilogy of the Tamuli is this book, One Domes of Fire, when I was a teenager, and rather liked them, got rid of them, and kind of wanted them back a few years ago. And if I remember, the library, or maybe it was Golden's, somebody had them, so I picked them up, but I hadn't actually gone back to them yet. And I don't know if I will. Next is A Sundiver by David Brin. This is a space opera that I haven't gotten to yet. Next is the concluding volume to Ted Williams's Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy, although technically it's a quartet in mass market paperback. This is To Green Angel Tower Part 1. I've been wanting to get to this trilogy for a while, and I haven't yet, even though I have all 3 volumes. This is Part 2 of To Green Angel Tower. It was such a massive book that they had to split it in mass market paperback. Next is Cryptonomicon by Neal Stephenson. Haven't gotten to yet. Next is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is a 20th century Arthurian novel. Next is The White Witch of the South Seas by Dennis Wheatley. Dennis Wheatley was a pulp thriller writer of the early 20th and mid-20th century, whose works are largely forgotten, I would think now. I talked a bit about The Devil Rides Out and some of his more occult stuff in one of the Boxes of Exile. Haven't gotten to this one yet. Next is The Dragonbone Chair, the first book of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Ted Williams. Next is The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. This is the first book in the Lightbringer series, which I haven't gotten to yet. Even though I made a point of buying all but the last 1 or 2 volumes. Next is Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny, which I haven't got to yet. This is the Locus Awards, edited by Charles N. Brown and Jonathan Strahan. This is a collection of short stories that won the Locus Awards. I've dipped in and out of this anthology a few times, although I've never made a concise effort to reread it or to read all of it. This is The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding, an epic fantasy that I have not got to yet. This is Masks by E.C. Blake. This is the first volume in a series that, again, I have not got to yet. This is Homunculus by James P. Blaylock, which I haven't got to yet. I picked this up largely because of the coincidence that the author of this book shares I think at least a surname with, it's just a surname, because the voice actor is Ed Blaylock, who voices King Bradley in Full Metal Alchemist, the English dub. I thought it was humorous that James P. Blaylock wrote a novel called Homunculus. And the last book on this bookcase is We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle, which I have not got to yet. I think it's a epic fantasy of unknown series. So that concludes this bookcase here. I will start tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but next Monday with this bookcase over here, which will take me a good chunk of next week. I should finish it up by next Thursday, and then I'll do the manga, which is over there. But anyway, BookTube, that's all I got for now. I will be back in a few hours with a weekly read. So until then, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.